Monday Night Poker, Episode 3. Let's go through it. Alright, to start things off, we are looking down at an Ace-9 suited. Working with 2 clubs, not bad. We're under the gun +2, and we decide to raise to 75. Our direct left, none other than Striker Breaks himself, decides to call, and we end up in a heads-up pot. Flop comes Ace-Jack 8. So far we've got top pair with a redraw to the backdoor nut flush. We bet 50, kind of see where we're at. Striker ends up calling, and we get to see a turn. Turn's a 10 of spades, so nothing too crazy there. We decide to keep applying some pressure and bet 150. Striker Break calls, and we get to see a river, which is the 6 of diamonds, so essentially it is a brick, even though the 7-9 gets there, and we can't really expect Striker to have that one. We decided to check for showdown, but Striker doesn't think that's good enough. Bets out 300, and we're looking at it with top pair, with a medium kicker. It's not the best. There's no flush, not really a straight besides 7-9, so it's highly unlikely he's working with that combination. So honestly, I'm not entirely sure what kind of bet he's putting out here. Usually a pair of jacks would have called things down and then just taken it to showdown value, but that's not what this bet seems like. This bet kind of seems like it's either he's also got a weak ace, or he's just trying to buy the pot. We end up calling, and see that Striker ended up missing a straight. Hand 2 starts out looking down at pocket 4s. Since we are first act, we decide to limp in, but we have plans of calling a raise if someone decides to put one out. Chip leader over here, Todd, decides to bet 150, and it folds back around to us. We call and end up in a heads-up action. We couldn't see the flop on the camera, but they were all a bunch of little cards. I check it, sitting with at least third pair. Todd decides to take a stab at it. But we're not going away just yet, because he could be doing this with 2 face cards that completely whiff this board. We'll call and see what he wants to do on that turn. Any doubts about the board immediately got washed away once that turn comes up, giving us a set of 4s. We check to lay the trap and expect the chip leader here to fire a second barrel. Todd doesn't disappoint, and he ends up betting 500. Looking back at how we moved forward with this, we probably should have just called it down, as to let him make the next move on the river. So we ended up raising it to 1600. Then we hear some news.
I think the cavity was like, and then when they didn't fill it, I was like, that's where you get that loud.
A very weak draw.
Unfortunately, it sounds like he's not really going to end up calling this raise. Well, I guess it's good that we probably didn't see that river, because if he did end up rivering that draw, that could have cost us a lot of chips. So we'll take it down now. In this next hand, we're looking down at 5 ace offsuit. We're under the gun +2, and we decide to raise it to 275. Striker Break on our direct left ends up going all in for 835 in chips. Folds back around. At this point, it seems like we're kind of committed to this pot. For less than 600 more, we could get a bounty here, giving us a point as well as securing $5. The problem is that most likely we're going into this hand losing. Striker Break's range at this point, considering his chip stack, is wide. A re-raise to an all-in after a raise pretty much signifies that he's got at least a medium, large pocket pair, or he's got us outkicked completely. I hesitantly call for not that much more though. Striker Break ends up having us outkicked with his ace-king. Then we get the best news in the world when in the window we hit the 5. The rest of the flop seems pretty safe, the turn's safe, and we just have to avoid a king on the river. At first glance, that paint scared us, but we end up getting to take the bounty, knocking out Striker Breaks. Immediately after that last hand, while we're still gathering our chips, we look down at ace-king. We raise to 300. Brent decides that's not enough, and he ends up raising 600 more, which quickly ends up getting the rest of the table to fold. Now we could go about this hand in 2 different ways. We could take our ace-king and re-raise, hoping that we're either flipping or we've got him out-kicked. But the 3-bet signifies that he might be stronger than that second possibility. But the second option is that we just call and see a flop, and then from there on we can maneuver while also living to see another day. We decide to take the safer route and just call. We get to see a flop come 3-6 deuce, 2 diamonds. We both end up checking. The turn is a 4, which doesn't really do much except it slightly improves our hand into now giving us a wheel draw. Brent bets 600, and now we've got an option to make. So he's betting 1/3 of the pot, and we've got 2 overs and a draw. We also could possibly have him out-kicked if he was trying to make a move with a slightly weaker ace. With the same logic that I came into pre-flop, I'm just going to call this one and see what the river develops. We get a river, which is actually a saving grace. We get a king. So at this point, now we realize that we've got showdown. We decide to check, and Brent quickly checks back, showing that he's got 2 10s. We live up to our name and barely win this pot just by the river. This next hand is a kind of an interesting one, and I couldn't really show too many graphics, as I don't exactly remember how the board ran out. A king was exposed pre-flop, and we end up looking down at our hand, which is Jack Queen of hearts. To make matters even weirder, striker on our direct left just doubles the blinds. Derek calls, and sitting at 40% of a royal flush, I'm going to go ahead and call the small raise to see the flop. Now again, I don't exactly remember what cards there were, but I do remember that we do have top pair, as a jack did hit. Striker bets 500 and gets Derek to fold. I can't say that we want to go anywhere just yet, as we're sitting with top pair and a pretty decent kicker. The turn brings in a flush draw, and we check. Striker bets 750, keeping his foot on the gas. Honestly, I'm pretty uncomfortable in this situation with all our given choices. We could flop and lose out on a massive pot where we're sitting at with top pair. We could call with top pair and see what develops on the river. Or we could go the aggressive route while we still have top pair and try to get flush draws, straight draws, and under pairs to fold. We decided to go the latter route and re-raise all in to try and put our opponent to the test. After considering it for only about 10 seconds though, striker breaks, ends up calling, and shows us that we are out-kicked against his ace-jack. And the last card that we saw wasn't the queen. Unfortunately, we got to repay striker back after knocking him out. In this next hand, we're in the big blind, and Derek bets to 350. We look down at King 9 offsuit. Our hand looks pretty defendable given the price, and we decide to call going to the flop. Heads up. Flop comes Jack 7 King, 2 clubs. We've got top pair. I check it, and Derek c-bets with 355. With top pair, we're not going anywhere just yet. We decide to call. Turn is the 10 of hearts. Now the board's looking real scary, as Derek could be doing some stuff with Jack 10, King 10, 8-9 suited, if he already wasn't slow playing against us with his Jack King or a set of any kind. Essentially, all we've got is a pure bluff catcher at this point with 1 card to come. I check, Derek checks, and we get to see a river. The river is a 4, which is a total blank. The clubs miss, and at this point, we decided it's safe enough to just check for showdown. Derek's not done yet, and he ends up betting 750, just under half the pot. As I said before, all we've got here really is just the bluff catcher. Not even that great of a kicker. It's purely a bluff catcher. Given his action pre-flop, it is entirely possible that Derek's got any of the hands I mentioned earlier, but also knowing Derek, it's entirely possible that he's just trying to buy the pot. Got a gut feeling, and we decide to go with it, calling with just our top pair. Derek says he should have gone all in, and reveals that he had ace 10 of diamonds. So even though he had his 10s, he did end up missing Broadway. On this next hand, we're going to try and redeem Jack Queen suited. Crane on our right limps, and still being out of position, we decide to just limp as well. Small blind surprisingly for the price folds, and big blind checks. 3 of us are going to the flop, and the flop comes 3 Queen 9 Rainbow. We've got top pair. Lacey leads out for 800. Crane folds, and we're not going anywhere with top pair just yet. We call. Turn is the king, which downgrades our top pair, but does give us the gut shot. Lacey goes all in for just over pot-sized bet for 3,200, and we barely have him covered with just 3,300. I can't imagine that he's sitting there with Queen King, as he would have made some moves pre-flop with that hand. You can hear me trying to figure out exactly what he's working with.
You're screaming like you got fucking 2 pairs, some shit. You got like a wonky 3 queen.
We end up calling, putting him to the test. Turns out we've got him outkicked, as he also has a queen, but the queen 8 of clubs. We've got 1 card to come. The 5 of diamonds seals the deal on the river as our better kicker plays, giving us the winning hand. We end up taking out our father-in-law and getting down to 5 players left. This next hand we look down at a beautiful 9-10 of hearts, and we raise to 800. The big blind is the only one who ends up calling, and we go heads up to a flop, which comes deuce, ace, 10, 2 diamonds. We've got middle pair with middle kicker. We both check and get to see a turn, which is the king, downgrading our hand even more so. Crane takes a stab at it with 500, and we call. The river is an undercard, being the 7, and Crane's not done betting at it, as he bets 900. If you've seen Crane in the last video, you can see that he was all in quite a bit, so this guy will definitely get loosey-goosey at the table. We're going to trust our gut on this one, and call with just third pair. Crane appears to start slow rolling us.
Show me your hand. What you got? Do you have a fucking queen? You slow rolling the shit out of me?
Jack queen.
I got time.
Get to call his bluff and take down a nice sized pot. The waves of the all-ins started pummeling through. And we drop down to our final 3 players, Todd, Derek, and myself. We secured our spot in the points area, and we're feeling pretty confident with a giant chip stack. I'm throwing this bonus hand in just because Derek really wanted to know what I had during this time. We were sitting down with ace king, and we got to a point in the blinds where the magic number to bet was 1,500. We did so getting small blind to fold, but Derek doesn't seem scared yet. He wants to see a flop. He's going to test our aggression, and he calls. We've got heads up, and we'll see a flop, which comes 5, 6, queen, 2 clubs. We've got 2 overs and a bunch of chips. We're going to keep the foot on the gas and down bet to 1,200 to continue putting pressure on the board. Now that you've seen what I had, Derek, what do you think? At one point, we get ourselves in a all-in match against Derek, and we're looking down at pocket 5s. Derek jams for about a third of our stack, and we have to call with our pocket pair. It's a best case scenario for us, as we've got a made hand, but it's still just a coin flip. Then the flop comes, giving us an up and down draw, but also giving Derek the wheel draw. It's one of the only times I don't actually want to call for a 5, as he, on the other hand, is rooting for one. The 10 on the turn gives Derek even more outs now, as he's got the nut flush draw to go along with his wheel draw. We've got so many cards to avoid, but if we take this, we can run away with this tournament with ease. Then, the river.
Wet, left in the snow.
Or club.
Oh, the 5! Flush 2.
It's unfortunate, as I said, it's the only card we really did not want to see in this deck. We wanted to just run this one straight out, but it can't be helped. With this backlash, we ultimately have 3 even stacks. Later on in the game, we look down at ace-king offsuit, and we're first to act. Considering chip stacks, considering the blinds, we've got no other choice but than to make one move.
All in?
We raise all in with our ace-king offsuit, and pray to God someone can call us with a weaker ace. We get a snap call from Todd, and Derek gets out of the way. We flip over our hands and see that we're in one of the most classic races of all time. Queens against ace-king.
Wow.
3 kings are going to be extremely tough for pocket queens to beat. The queen doesn't happen on the turn, and a river is another brick. giving us the win, Derek knocking out a player and dropping us down to a heads-up match between Derek and I. After playing a couple hands, we have about the same amount of chips, and we end up calling a night and splitting first, second, and last man pot. We play out the final hand, which also gives us the bounty, on top of us having the bigger stack, which will also give us the extra point. So that's all we have for the game, which turned out really well. And because of that last game, we actually moved up a couple places in the leaderboard, and we're just right underneath first place now. So we just gotta buckle in and try and get there as best as we can. And we'll see you in the next video. And as always, enjoy your stay.